Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hi, and welcome to Real Conversations with Lisa and Susan. I'm Susan.
And I'm Lisa. Welcome.
Today we're going to be talking about a couple of different things, following up on some themes that we've had in the past. This region, the capital region, is really poised for some great things. We've got some great new companies coming into the area, and we're poised for an economic development revival, if you will. And so we're going to be chatting about public transit and economic development and going green and urban planning, kind of all combined in a mix that makes up, what's next for us in this, next couple of decades.
Right, and one of the, we've talked about public transportation before in the past, but one of the things for me that's really different is, or I don't know if different, but one of the things we need to talk about is, we're going to be growing, but how do we maintain the quality of life that we've become accustomed to in the capital region? How do we, plan it in such a way that, it's a positive impact on everyone versus, where it's, a 2-hour commute to get from, 20 miles,
Right.
So that's part of the factor here, why we're having this conversation.
Public transit is near and dear to me. I have a history of having worked for the regional public authority that runs the bus system here in the capital region. And what's really cool about public transit now, it's kind of folded into a very sexy green program.
That's right.
So
who knew riding the bus would be sexy
riding the bus
someday.
is sexy because it's also very environmentally friendly.
Yes.
And it's good for the economic climate of a community too, to see what is the quality of public transit that's being run there.
And let's face it, the price of gas is not coming down.
No, it's not.
And riding the bus is very economical.
I ride the bus. I ride the bus sometimes, and I'll tell you, I get to read. I get to read things, magazines that have been sitting on the side of my, my bedside table for months. I can finally pick up and plow through some articles. So
well,
truly
there
it
you
works
go.
for me.
Everybody.
or do work. It's great. I'm a big advocate of it.
Right, and so our intention today is to just really talk about this issue, see what we can discover, and
And we've got two great guests.
As always, we do. First, we have with us Carm Basile, who is the Executive Director of the Capital District Transit Authority here in the Capital Region. And we also have with us, very exciting to have Peter Pritchard, who is with the Center for Economic Growth. And you can tell us a little bit more about that in a moment. Carm, we're just going to start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you, your role in CDTA, and what you think about what we've been talking about so far.
First, it's great to be here with all this excitement and energy. I wish I could get.
You never thought that two women could get so excited about public transit, right?
Well,
who knew?
Who knew? I wish we could get 750,000 people in the region to get this excited. The job would be a lot easier. But I've been executive director at CDTA for actually less than a year, but I've worked at CDTA pretty much my whole adult life. Going on actually 29 years next month.
Wow.
So I've made it a career. It's a career stop, not a career spot. And it's a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I think if you cut my finger, I bleed blue now. But you have
Carm and I were colleagues.
Yeah, we were colleagues several years ago. Not that many, right?
Not that many years ago.
And we share, I think, a passion for improved travel choices in the capital region. That's what it's all about. It's not buses or trains or planes or boats. It's giving people choices that they want and need, that they deserve. I think
And that work,
that
right?
work. I think the area is underserved. I think the area requires more. One of our objectives in the coming months is to get everyone to understand that. And when we say everyone, we mean everyone. Whether you use our service or not, whether you're thinking about our service or not, whether you will ever use our service or not, you should appreciate what we bring to the table. You should appreciate our role in economic development, in social development, in choice development. Without us, what happens? And we certainly don't want to make that choice with or without us. We think, though, that people in the region should know more about us. They should know our impact, what our impact could be, why we're not making the impact that we need to be, and really let people make decisions, because good transit results in a vibrant community. Good transit supports economic development. Good transit should be thought of almost like a utility. I mean, you wouldn't build a 4-story building that houses 500 people if it didn't have water, sewer, and electric. What we'd like to say is you wouldn't build it if it didn't have water, sewer, electric, and good transportation service. Whether that's good roads, good taxi services, good shuttle services, you name it, we want to be thought of in that vein.
Yeah, and I think some of the better designed communities are renowned for building in an area that's adjacent to public transit and where the transit is easy for the community members to get to.
It makes sense. It makes common sense.
We're going to get more into that as we go through this show, but I want to bring Peter into the conversation and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do at the Center for Economic Growth.
Great. Well, it's great to be here, and this is a new thing for me as well. So we are at Center for Economic Growth. We are a regional nonprofit economic development organization. So what does that mean? It's a mouthful that says we're not a public entity, but we spend through grants and membership and other programmatic approaches a budget that focuses on the regional side of economic development. Our region is blessed with a number of economic development organizations that offer either land or dollars that can help develop projects. The good news is we have a lot. The bad news is we have a lot in some ways, because if we act as a region, which we truly are. I mean, I'm an example of, from a commuting standpoint, I go across 3 counties on my way between work and home. So the lines of the communities can come and go, and I don't really notice it because it really is a regional community. So when we talk about economic development, how we focus on the growth of companies, the growth of employment, and the growth of overall, wherewithal, the focus on the region needs to really be part of that activity. So we spend a fair amount of time kind of orienting our partners in seeing really what the region looks like, and be able to understand where is it that a good focus of them, like let's take as an example, like a Chamber of Commerce or an IDA is really good at doing what they do, but they may not be able to appreciate or even take advantage of what might be a regional impact. And we use Global Foundries as an example because we've been involved with it for a number of years with partners in helping to develop that idea. That is kind of a very large size regional impact. When we talk about promoting the area to the semiconductor industry, when that was put back 10, 15, 20 years ago, when we started talking about that idea, it really needed to look as 100 or maybe 200 miles from our region. So it wasn't about Albany County or Saratoga County or any of the regional entities. It was really about what does this place look like from the outsider's perspective coming in. And if we do that, there's a lot of assets. So there's a continued need to have a role in focusing on the regional side of economic development. So we have a role in that space. So we talk about transformational projects that really can bring things forward. And when you focus on the regional side of it, we then collaborate with all the folks and try to, and sometimes there's purposeful rubs and we need to work through that.
High enough up, looking over
like
all of
bird's-eye
these
view.
issues, like an aerial view almost, that you can say, oh, this entity is doing this over here, and the same thing is going on over, we can bring them together.
Sometimes it's a function of bringing people together. Sometimes it can be a function of educating the 2 entities that may be perhaps even at odds with each other to say, this is a good way for us to be 1 + 1 = 3, not the 1.2, which is what we have had in the past, where it's a sum 0, if not less. You can really now be additive and be successful.
successful.
We had a guest on the show a couple of years ago, Charlotte Buchanan, who had been charged by the then governor, I think it was Governor Pataki, perhaps it was Pataki, I don't recall,
I think it was Cuomo.
to
Maybe
do
not, I don't
do a study of regional development, regional growth. I don't know if you were familiar. I know,
remember.
Carm, you remember
remember.
that because I think she came over
Oh, yeah.
to
She
CDTA at
talked
the
to
time
us.
and talked about it. But I don't know if you've ever familiarized yourself, but she was a big advocate of it. But I think she was a little ahead of her time with that approach, and I think the time has come
Yeah.
to look
Of course,
at it
we tell
regionally.
people that we've been regional before regional was cool.
It's true.
right. And green before it
and
was
green
cool.
before it's cool. And the concept of regionalism is talked about and talked about and talked about. It's not difficult, but it requires what Peter said: is you cross 3 counties and don't realize there are lines. You have to get the lines, political boundaries, things like that out of your mind, out of your vocabulary. And
You have to be willing to.
You have to be willing. And I see some signs of regionalism. I
do
see where
too.
the city of Watervliet and the city of Cohoes are talking about merging their fire departments. Oh boy, what a novel idea! And it's a great idea, but it's really the same thing on the transportation side. We've already done that.
One thing that we haven't mentioned here is the economic recession that we're in, and doesn't look like we're going to be coming out of anytime soon. I mean, that has to kind of lay over this discussion about where we are economically as a community and where we're headed. Would you say, Peter, we're in a better position perhaps than most communities because we have Tech Valley, if you will?
Well, two comments. The first one is that CNN, I think Money Magazine, had an article published recently. This was a kind of a list of what you call the most recession-proof cities. Okay. Remarkably, Albany was #1 on that list.
That is awesome.
So from
how
from
come people aren't talking about that? Because this is the
I just
first
got
time
sent
I've
to me
ever
the other
heard
day,
it.
so I'm talking about it today, and that's
This
why
is
I'm here.
awesome, and it's
Breaking
here now.
news.
Breaking news
On
on
Real
real
Conversations.
conversations.
That's
It's true.
right. So there's one object. So it's not that we are poised well for high growth per se, but that we experience the downside much less than other geographic areas that have seen mostly the housing bubble. Okay, we've been really isolated from that. Some of these places have lost 40, 50% of their home values. Entire regions are just decimated by that. We've got a colleague that works down in the panhandle of Florida, and he says it's just unreal. You see block after block of homes. I mean, homes empty, businesses empty. I mean, it's truly very impactful on the local economy.
That was before.
This is during the recession. I'm talking about recent times in the last 2 years. We haven't seen anything like that, to that scope, to that nature. So we are very isolated in some respects, or in many respects, to that kind of downside. Okay, the upside potential we have also been fairly isolated from as well. Our region, and this historical perspective, I think CDTA and the Capital Region Planning Authority, when Dave Rooney was with us, we spent some time focused on a project that tried to do some study work, understanding what this growth potential, if you attracted, again, 3-4 years ago, if you attracted a very large project like the Global Foundries project comes, what does that mean in our region in terms of growth? Our historical regional growth has been about 1/3 the size or 1/3 the rate of the U.S. So we grow much slower. If we triple our rate,
But there's less volatility.
and our less volatility,
Yeah.
by bringing in a tech company, which is going to have its very nature a fair amount more volatility than it will be even like a state government, if you will, if you're a capital, you will have like 3 times the growth of volatility only brings us up to the national average. Yet if you look at our growth numbers, the impacts on transportation, on water, on bridges, roads, sewers, is if we use the land in the same fashion, okay, we end up creating enormous problems, and it actually costs us more to continue expanding into the suburbs the way we've done them historically. I'm not trying to throw a softball at you here, but the point is that from an economic perspective, just looking at the pure dollar spend, it really becomes an enormous issue that you have to address face on. Fast forward 3 years after the study, we now have that project here. Global Foundries is moving ahead. We're going to have a tremendous number of influx of high tech and associated businesses that are be supporting that. We already have people moving from Austin, Texas. We're already having people move in from Germany. Okay, the people are landing here now. They're starting to buy houses now. this is something which is truly in the here and now happening. What decisions we make today are going to be, impacting what happens downstream. So we're at a really great time in history to be able to impact these things, but we need to be kind of in the area of the smart growth world.
Yeah, and the reality of the region is it's a geographical nightmare for transportation services because you don't have one central city. I mean, we're much different than Rochester, Syracuse, and Buffalo. Just compare us upstate, where the focus is on one city. Here, although Albany is certainly the leader, Schenectady, Troy, and Saratoga, and then the smaller cities in between sort of kind of fight for attention. And at least with us, they get attention because there's a significant number of jobs and people live there. And so where do you focus your resources? And that's become sort of a kind of a tug of war. And I think we have to think about that from a development perspective. Now what we've done is we've added this great high-tech company with 2,000 jobs, but it's not in the middle. It's not in one of the cities. It's sort of off middle center to the right. It's going to be a problem. I think we have to address it, though.
Well, I think one of the strengths of CDTA is their ability to kind of gather data and look at where are the most jobs. And I know that you have a lot of technology tools that you use
so than ever
actually
before.
Study where your route should be.
Right.
And I've read in the last few years about your organization realigning and redesigning a lot of the routes to accommodate the growth.
It's been a tough thing to do, but for example, 80% of the region's jobs are on our bus routes. So that suggests that you don't need this global shift, into a new community to attract people to our services. 80% of all the region's jobs are on our bus routes. We've taken a soup to nuts look at everything we do, and it's from a 30,000-foot perspective, not down on the ground. And what we're finding is if we want to just be more successful, you just make your strong services stronger. But we don't just want to be more successful. We want to be a change influencer. We want to work with Center for Economic Growth and others to address the regional need. And the regional need doesn't need to be solved only by CDTA. So we think our role goes far beyond just making ourselves stronger. It goes into partnerships. It goes into understanding our impact. And our impact is, even if we're not a player in a particular part of the region, we should be there. We should be there.
Yeah.
We should be at the table, and we should be lending whatever expertise we can lend because it goes beyond just buses.
I don't want this I like the quaint, charming smallness of this region, and I think that's one of the things that really makes it appealing. I want economic viability. I want these businesses to come in. I want people to make a good living and not have and people not have to leave the community once they graduate from college because there are no good paying jobs. But on the other hand, I don't want these cities to be connected by freeways. I don't want it to turn into one big parking lot. And I'm sure I speak for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of reason why I keep coming back to this area, and I've come back 4 times. I was born and raised in this area, but I've gone away 4 times and I've come back 5 times, I guess, whatever that means.
Can't find it.
But one of the reasons why it's quaint and it's charming, and it's small, and I like that.
I don't think anyone wants parking lots. I don't think anyone wishes for parking garages, but we gravitate to them. And
It's easy.
Well, the reason we gravitate to them is the love affair with the automobile.
Yeah.
And, we have to be honest with ourselves. That's not going to stop.
Right.
That's not going to go away. We don't want to compete with Detroit or wherever, the capital of the automobile capital of the world is. But we want to compete with quality of life issues. And we realize that people are going to want to use their car, but we don't need to build parking garages ad nauseum. We don't need to have acres and acres of parking attached to a suburban development. What we need to do is smart things and smart growth. And smart growth doesn't need to be a scary thing. I think some people are a little frightened by smart growth. You got to take choices away. No, we're not. We're just going to, I think, work together to shape reasonableness. And, 1,000 people who work in a building, so we therefore have to have a 1,000-car parking garage? I don't think so. Let's scale things down. For example, does the parking have to be in front of the building? Why can't it be in back of the building? And the front of the building reserved for transit, for pedestrians, for kiss and ride, drop off, those types of friendly things. I think we can all agree on those types of things. And that's how you maintain the quaintness and the friendliness and the charm of a region. It's not hard.
There was an article in the TU, I think this past weekend, and it was about people sharing their commutes, like 2 or more people in a car sharing the commute. And what was really interesting about it was they looked at what are the other kind of innovative ways to get people to commute together, share their rides.
Yep.
And there was one federal program that they talked about where the federal government dispersed money to, I don't know who it was a not-for-profit perhaps, and that organization bought some minivans, that would hold, 6, 8 people, something like that, and leases them out to groups of friends, family, neighborhoods, where they can get 6, 8 people who all pretty much drive to the same place to go to work. And, they lease these out for next to nothing. And so these people can get these automobiles, these large vehicles, and drive in together. And that's kind of one kind of flexible, user-friendly way to get people buddying up with other people to drive to work.
That money flows through us.
Oh, okay. Very good.
And that's where we're going. A menu of choices for people. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 40-foot bus, but maybe it doesn't work for you, let's say. But a van pool does, or an organized carpool does. And that's what we want to give people choices.
I love that idea.
And little by little, you change the transportation landscape of the region, little by little, because it's small incremental steps. We don't need to be, one size fits all, but I think we do need to provide people with more choices and let them decide.
I'm trying to recall, I did run across something like this. It was more of and I can't remember where, but it was more of a social network-like activity where there was a meeting place, kind of a buying and sell, if you will, a marketplace, where people who were traveling, maybe even Tuesdays and Thursdays as an example, I'm on routine, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm always different. To be able to kind of find what it is that you're looking for in terms of a ride. So some people, and I'll use very predictable time frames at which people are going in and out of work. And if you're driving down I-90 and you're getting off Route 5, exit 5 and 4, and you see at 5:02, this place is very predictably a very congested area because the Harriman campus is letting out. So you have more people kind of predictably moving. And then there's the other component of it where people are less able to be flexible or need flexibility, so they can't, kind of say, I'm leaving at this time because work will not allow me. So you have that whole range of it, but being able to create some level of interaction or some kind of ability for people to connect, perhaps into social media, that allows them to kind of say, yep, today I need it, or tomorrow or the next week I'm out, and it really doesn't matter whether I'm going. It doesn't cancel the fact that I've got the keys for the van today, and therefore I'm stuck doing it. And that's the thing you try to avoid, because then it becomes, there's a plus and a minus to doing it. You try to make as many pluses as you can available to people. And again, I think it's to the point of choices.
I agree.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful application of social networking technology to help solve these problems, which wasn't available even 5 years ago, frankly.
It's changing daily.
It's amazing.
And I think, I think we're gravitating to what the issues are. And the issues are really choice. Provide a menu of options to people, and I think they'll gravitate to it. But let's stop thinking that we're going to compete with the automobile. We're flat out not in the capital region. You can go to other regions where you can, but not here, because the level of congestion, the level of delay, the reasons why we live here are different than other urban areas. So we have to align our choices and our menu list with that. And I think you're right, this kind of small town feel with all the features of a big city. I see that all the time in a lot of the things that we use to promote the region. So I think we have to align this travel choice thing with that kind of mindset. We're not going to see people moving in thousands to van pools and carpools. It's probably 5 and 10 at a time, but that's okay. That's okay. So we're developing a menu of options.
And I think one of the things I think people aren't aware of is the difference it makes when one person doesn't drive,
It's huge.
you know, or 10 people from a community don't drive, like in so many ways. The ripple effect is just amazing. You know, when you think about the emissions and all the different factors. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, the green initiative is one of the more fascinating things I've seen in my professional career. We have been converting our fleet to hybrid buses. The level of almost kid-like amazement with hybrid buses amazes me. If for no other reason, we ought to be buying hybrid buses just because of the receptivity to people in the region. Putting bike racks on all of our buses, bicycle racks in Albany, New York, on buses. Never would have thought it to be successful. It is the fastest growing part of our market.
Isn't that something?
We had 40,000 bike boardings last month, to the point now where we don't have the capacity for more bikes. We had a fella in today selling a 3 bike rack, not a 2 bike rack. So we're thinking of converting the 2s to 3s because we don't have any room. So I think we have to find out what people in the region want and like, and they seem to be all over the environmental footprint. Even if they're not a player in that, even if it doesn't suit them, let's play on it. I mean, I come back to bikes. I never thought, ever, that we'd have 40,000 bike boardings on our buses. You remember when you worked at CDTA, we had a couple of lonely little bike racks on buses.
Oh, I remember the meeting where we talked about it, and everybody came out of it scratching their heads.
We almost got laughed out of the room. Today, it's a room that
It's like an of course,
we
right?
need to expand.
Yeah.
Never would have thought it. So
I'm gonna kind of transition the discussion here with some demographics. I mean, we have an aging population, but we also are trying to focus on having more young people stay here and not move out of the area. And then, you know, hopefully, if the Tech Valley Initiative, which has been kind of in the cooker for maybe 10 years now, wouldn't you say? It's been something that people have been talking about in this community for like 10 years. Well, you know, it's going to start to take now. I mean, it already has. We've got large.
I think it's taken.
It's taken. I mean, we're there. So I guess I have kind of a couple of questions. What do we do when the young people do start to stay? Like, how will that change things? And now that the Tech Valley way of looking at this community is kind of fully baked, what's the next iteration of that for this community? Where do we go now that we're a success with Tech Valley? Okay, so what's next?
In about 3 minutes or less.
So you're looking to me to answer that, right? I mean,
absolutely, absolutely.
well, I've got no crystal ball, and so I'm not the real estate planner as well. If I was, I'd be in the wrong job or in the right job. But
you do look at growth tech companies, right? So what's next?
Well, it's true. We have a very significant part of our population which is graduating and not staying because there really aren't that many alternatives here. As more and more grow and decide to stay, and we've seen indications in the gaming industry, for example, we now have a handful of companies that have been successful in staying, growing. Schools are now developing, as an example, in the gaming industry. Who would have thunk that the video game industry is just as large as movies? 5 years ago, I would have taken that bet and I would have lost. So there's very significant growth in those areas, and people are sticking around. They demand a different set of requirements for staying, and it deals more with the quality of life issues that you're describing more on the urban side. So it's talking about options and availability of performing and visual arts, transportation choices that don't necessarily include my jumping into a car in order to drive as a single person. Restaurant options, okay, housing stock, which is our traditional housing stock has been built from a fairly expansive time post-World War II, where they've been slapped up 1 family, 2 families all over the place. We now have this housing stock which is seemingly inappropriate for what people are looking for currently. That's a very big deal in cities all across, I mean, the very large urban cities, Troy, Schenectady, Albany, but even places like Waterville, where you've got the high concentration of those kinds of housings. People are scratching their head going, now what do we do about that? And how do we then create an attractive approach towards keeping people here. And those factors play a more significant role than even my age. I mean, I'm not the young guy, but it's changed significantly even since I kind of came out of school 25 years ago. So there's a tremendous move towards this quality of life issue that is much different. We've been working to try to understand that. How is it then you create, networks, professional, social? There's been a wonderful group called the Stakeholders, as an example, who's
Yeah,
come
we've
on.
had them on,
You've
too.
had them on,
Yeah.
and
Catherine Hedgeman.
and
Yeah.
that and dealing with the aspects of investing into your community, not necessarily on a return basis, but for the better of what's going on. They have a stake in being a community participant and investing into us. So you're seeing there's a larger push now towards social entrepreneurship. So it's not about the guy starting a software company and exiting at a 10x multiplier or a 1,000x multiplier. It's about doing something which is valuable, something that they feel passionate about. And that's a different animal. That's a very different beast from what we've seen even 10 years ago, in terms of the tech sector for entrepreneurship, of which I spent a fair amount of my time helping early stage and small businesses doing exactly that. So we see social media, we see just different business models that people are considering looking at. All that plays into how then do you change it. I think it becomes very unattractive for having the only option to be, I've got to travel to Clifton Park to live in a two-bedroom apartment complex off of Route 9. Not to be disparaging to that, but that's been much of the options. If you don't own a house, okay, and the rental properties really haven't been aligned with that nature of market demand. Okay, so people are looking at that, and there's been some large projects that have been kind of offered up on the waterfronts. Again, a place where we probably have more waterfront property than really any other major city, and yet that could be the largest attractive feature we have. And if you look historically how we've used it, it's been industrial and transportation. It's not being utilized as an asset. It's almost like a liability.
So we have to ship that. Maybe that's next.
Maybe.
For
We have
example.
about I'm sorry, but we have less than a minute left.
Boy,
Flies, doesn't it? So
I was enjoying listening to Peter.
I know.
So was I.
Very, very interesting. Is there anything, I will have your websites up at the end of the show so people can find out more information, but is there any last thoughts you want people to?
Just one thing, I think when Peter was talking about quality of life, we talked about it earlier, but it's worth repeating that a quality public transportation system is a true measure of the economic vibrancy and the quality of life sort of rating index of a region. And I think that we are blessed to be at the upper half of the list, but that's not good enough for me. I want to be at the top of the list. And I think that involves, the community, not just the authority, the transit authority, and interested parties. It involves everyone becoming interested in improving the quality of life, whether that be transportation or social things or whatever it might be. We have to ingrain that into people's thought process.
Very
Absolutely.
good. Well, thank you so much for watching Real Conversations, and thank you both for being our guests. It's just been a joy to have this conversation. I'm glad such smart people are living in our community and thinking about these things.
And we get to talk with them, too.
And if you would like to give us any information or have feedback on our show, please feel free to email us at realconversations@hotmail.com. Thank you for watching Real Conversations with Lisa and Susan. I'm Lisa.
I'm Susan, and take the bus. Once a week, take
At
the
least.
bus.
Thank you.